Okay, welcome to our opening panel on the Sisters 3, which is a project of the Collegium Sibyllae. We're the Pythia graduates of the Via Carmen Pythia program in the temple. And last night we facilitated for you a dream incubation journey. And today we have a panel for you that is the summary of a year of our work with examples. Last year, each member of the Collegium chose at least one group of goddesses that came in a set of 3. So, like the Fates, the Norns, the Grey, the Gorgons, we had some Muses, we had the Zoria, we had several others. And what we did was we spent the whole year studying the Sisters 3 and in their many forms. And today we wanted to, that's what gave rise to the topic for this year's Cosmogenetrix, the Triskelion portal, that we were opening a portal to the Fates, the Sisters 3. So what we're going to do today is we're going to open with our Sibylline affirmation, led by Priestess Shaylee, and then we're going to sort of hear some quick little exemplary presentations about various different Sisters 3 that didn't get an entire long form presentation, but we couldn't bear to have them left out. So Shaylee, would you lead us? My love, you're muted. Could we have you unmute and start over?
Sorry about that. I thought I hit the button. There is one circle of women's energy, and I am part of this energy. It is mine to direct. I wish to direct my energy. To know that I can create my own reality and that sending out a positive expectation will bring a positive result. That the energy which I send out returns to me. That there are an infinite number of possibilities for my life. That every situation is an opportunity to practice and develop my craft. That my instincts and intuitions can be used to guide me. That my only power is in the present. That the goddess of life force is within me. To will that I shall never use my energy unwisely or to limit the free will of another. That I shall grow in wisdom, strength, knowledge, and understanding. That I shall, as much as I am aware, act in honesty to myself and to others. That I shall never use my energy for evil, aggressive, or manipulative ends, and shall only use my energy for positive purposes. That I shall grow to understand the cyclic, life-affirming rhythms of the earth, and always act with love toward her and all her plants and creatures. That I shall transform all negative in my environment. To dare, to be myself, to take responsibility for myself and my actions, and know that consciously or unconsciously, I have drawn situations to me. To be strong and independent, even in the midst of a struggle. To accept and understand those whose ethnic or racial background, social or economic class, appearance, or sexual preferences are different from my own. To stand firm and committed to women and my spiritual beliefs, even in times of isolation, pain, desperation, or negativity. And to understand when to speak and when to keep the silence. So mote it be.
Thank you, Shaylee. And I'm going to now pop up my screen sharing is paused. Stop and reshare. There we are. So I'm going to walk you through the first little triad for today. I call them the Sisters of the Desert. We're going to be working with them in our new moon circle later this year, but they are Alat, Al-Usa, and Menat, the goddesses of sand, water, and smoke. They are 3 prominent pre-Islamic goddesses. They were worshipped in the ancient Arabian world amongst the Quraysh tribe of Mecca, and they are pre-Islamic goddesses. Their worship was indigenous and pagan and nomadic and based in the desert before the coming of Islam. But with the coming of Islam, they were subsumed by Islam and then named Allah's daughters. But before they were Allah's daughters, they were independent tribal goddesses with their own being, and particularly worshipped in Petra amongst the Nabateans. And they each had their own unique energy. A lot was kind of a mother goddess figure. She is like the kind of Aphroditic figure amongst the three in a way. She's a mother goddess, she's a fertility goddess, but she also would be depicted with incense, burning incense, and with perfumes. One of the things about Allat is that she was worshipped as a large stone and or like a pillar first before she took on any kind of female form. And then later she became represented by the crescent moon or sometimes as the crescent moon within the sun. And she almost always in her depictions will carry a sheaf of wheat, and occasionally she's depicted holding a pot of incense because amongst the Nabateans, the trade and frankincense and myrrh were two of their biggest moneymakers, establishing them as the one of the wealthiest tribes of what we now call Jordan, but they kind of had other manifestations elsewhere, but this was their main stronghold at Petra. And they had extensive water gathering technologies in the desert, which between the robust trade in frankincense and myrrh and their water network, they were amongst the wealthiest people in the ancient world and the most developed technologically in the ancient world. Their temples were carved out of sandstone, and their water system actually had um, a pipeline that ran 6 miles from the mountainous, rainy regions down into the desert, and then had along the way a tiered system that meant that the water pipes would never burst, even though they might get very full, because they would have to like sometimes flow upward and then back downward. And then they also had a separate piping system that removed wastewater from their city. They had really sophisticated plumbing. And a lot was the incense pot, the grain, the farming, and the fertility. Al-Usa was more like the warrior mother. She was often depicted sometimes as a sacred stone or pillar. We see her here with this unique tricorn hat, was one of her symbols. She sometimes would have with her different things showing the markings of the orbit of the planet Venus because she was associated with Venus, the rising and setting star. Al-Usa means the strong one, and she's probably the most famous amongst the three. And at Antioch, Isaac at Antioch, a 5th century writer, called her Beltis, which meant lady, and various different Semitic goddesses later shared that same title. Um, we see Saint Epiphanius in the 4th century describing her as the mother of the Dusores, or Dushares, which were the people who worshipped the god Dushara. Dushara is like the Zeus of the Nabatean pantheon, the great father mountain god. She's thought of as being sometimes his partner or sometimes his daughter, or she sometimes was just worshipped on her own, as at the Temple of the Winged Lions in Petra, where the waterways that poured into the city cisterns came down the side of her temple and went into the city cisterns. And part of the job of the priestesses there was to bless those waters as they went past during the rainy season. And sometimes she's compared to Ishtar or Astarte. And in the Greek tradition, she was linked with Aphrodite. And at Petra, under the Temple of the Winged Lions, there was a small shrine to Aphrodite that was later erected there that marked it as like, oh, we recognize you. We know you. We're going to bring our shrine to this place. And then Manat. Manat is like kind of the crone of the three. She's the goddess of communicating with the dead. She is her name is derived from Arabic words mania, which means fate and destruction, doom and death, or menata, meaning part, portion, or that which is allotted. So she's the one who measures the span of the life. And she was venerated particularly as a black stone, a large black stone. And then that large black stone later becomes what we now know as the Kaaba at Mecca. So the large black cube with the meteorite implanted in the side of it at Mecca is the descendant of the black stone that was worshipped as Manat. And interestingly, for you Hecate devotees out there, there was at the temple at Didyma of Apollo, there was also a ritual that was done to offer small black stones or one square black stone to Hecate, which may have some connection here to the journey between the worlds. As a goddess of death, she was personified in poetry as guiding individuals into their graves and offering the cup of death to them that they would then drink. Um, and the waning moon was depicted above her head and kind of associated her with end of life mysteries. So today, when we see the crowds gathering at Mecca to perform the annual Hajj pilgrimage, they are going around and around this central black stone, but they're um, and today these three goddesses are thought of as the daughters of Allah, but actually they predated him. I think it's interesting, though, that they live on in the Quran as his daughters. But there's something really powerful about this triad that places them as objects of veneration in the form of stone, standing stones in ancient times in the desert. Can you imagine coming upon a massive stone in the desert when you're traveling and that it symbolized a gateway to water, wealth, um, beautiful buildings, safety and security? That was their role. They watched over and guarded all those who were journeying through the treacherous sands of the desert. So that's mine, Al-At, Al-Usa, and Manat. And I met them when I was in Petra a few years ago. So next up, who would like to go next? Give us a little wave and let me know if you'd like to share your screen. We have, I think, the Gray Eye, the Gorgons, the a couple others. Who'd like to go first? We have a couple other ladies from our group here. Go ahead, Shaylee, and then we'll have Lisette. And I'm going to allow.
We don't need the screen shared this time.
Great. Okay,
Didn't
good.
prepare anything for that.
So then let me put you here.
I'm going to minimize you so that I can look at my stuff. Hello, everyone. So I'm presenting on the Gorgons today. The Gorgons were three female figures in Greek mythology that are misunderstood and often villainized. They're considered to be monsters who could kill people just by looking at them. The sisters were named Theno, meaning mighty, strong, or force; Euryale, the far springer or broad; and of course, Medusa, the queen or protector. Those stories of the Gorgons date back as far back as the 8th century BC with Hesiod. It would be the Roman poet Ovid who would give us the story that most of us are familiar with today. In his story, Medusa is born the beautiful sister. The other two are born monsters. Later, after being raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple, the goddess would punish Medusa by transforming her into the monster that we know with the snake heads. The snake for hair. sorry, the snakes for hair. In Ovid's version, though, only Medusa possessed the power to turn people into stone. Over the years, the Gorgons have changed many times. The story of the Gorgons has changed many times. One consistency is that Perseus is always sent to kill Medusa and bring back her head. But what happens to her head has had lots of debate. Steno and Euryale are noted as being immortal and entirely indestructible. Steno specifically is said to be the deadliest of the three sisters, killing more men than the two sisters combined. But what happens to them after Medusa's death is unknown. As with many of the Greek mythological monsters, the Gorgons were associated with remote and extreme regions. According to Hesiod, they lived beyond the glorious ocean in a frontier land towards night, whatever that means. Other authors believe that the Gorgons lived near Libya in North Africa or near the Graeae in the Far East. They also can reside in the extreme north or by the gates of the underworld. So basically, nobody knows where they came from. The iconography of the Gorgons is intertwined with the Gorgian, this huge head, a representation of a Gorgon's head, characteristically shown with a wide, round face, snake hair, a wide mouth spread in a sinister grin, exposing sharp fangs or tusks, and a protruding tongue. This image is often found on shields and is thought to have possessive qualities, along with symbolizing the ability to ward off evil. With the Gorgon's head, but the Gorgon's head wasn't the only thing that was thought to be powerful about them. Their blood was also thought to be extremely potent. According to popular myth, the venomous snakes of Africa were born from the drops of blood that fell on the sand from Medusa's head. Similarly, Ovid claims that the drops of Medusa's blood that fell into the sea turned into seaweed or coral. Other accounts say that their blood possessed both poisons and healing properties. Still, it's possible that they weren't monsters at all. Some legends say that the Gorgons were three female rulers of African islands who owned a precious golden statue of Athena that was called the Gorgon, which was stolen by Perseus. Other stories say that they're Libyan warrior women, very similar to Amazons, and the stories go on and on. The stories of the Gorgons represent fear and protection, punishment, and female power. With fear and protection, their fearsome appearance acts as a protective symbol against evil, and invoking them for protection is a great way to work with them. Punishment. Medusa's transformation is often seen as punishment for her hubris, but her ability to turn people into stone serves as another reminder of what can happen when you do bad things. Female power refers to the Gorgons themselves and their embodiment of female rage, the empowerment, specifically against patriarchal society, especially in today's society, and working with them can help remind us that we are strong and fearless where we want to be. The Fates are said to have had an heavy influence with the destinies of the Gorgons, especially Medusa, as her fate is often intertwined with Perseus's tale. It is possible to view Medusa's transformation into a monster as a manifestation of a predetermined fate, determined by both divine desire and mortal action. The Gorgons illustrate the inevitability of fate. In their monstrous nature, they remind us that certain destinies cannot be avoided, and their gazes symbolize one's fate in dire situations.
Thank you on the Gorgons. And yes, and Aislinn Wolf, you're up next.
Hello. So I'm going to talk about the Graeae. So the Graeae, also known as the three Grey sisters in Greek mythology, they shared one eye and one tooth. They were also born with gray hair and lived in a cave far from all civilization. They were said to live in the plain of Cister. somewhere in the Far East, according to Aeschylus, who wrote Prometheus Born. They were feared due to their mysterious nature and were considered symbols of challenges, obstacles, and dread. They were also considered sea deities who lived isolated in a cave. They were considered powerful crones, and their divine parents were Ceto and Phorcys, who were powerful primordial sea gods. The Graeae were the sisters of the Gorgons, the most famous being, of course, Medusa. In Hesiod's Theogony, they were classified as fair-cheeked, and in Prometheus Bound, they were described as being swan-shaped. Some modern scholars state that they may have been sky goddesses, and that they in reality might have been young and beautiful and very elegantly dressed, not the way we normally think of the Graeae. So a little bit about their symbolism. The names of the Graeae are Dano, which means dread, Enyo, which means horror, and Pemphredo, which means alarm, or she who guides the way. They share one eye and a tooth, and this usually symbolizes unity and collective power. Their eye was considered a symbol of power and knowledge, and the tooth represented wisdom and age. These attributes help define their soothsayer abilities to see the past, present, and the future. And then, of course, the most famous myth regarding the Graeae is the myth of Perseus and the Graeae. Perseus, the son of Zeus, is ordered by King Polydectes to bring back the head of Medusa, or he would kill his mother. So Perseus has 3 magical items that will help him retrieve his request. He was aided by Athena and Hermes. He's told to visit the 3 crone sisters in their cave and instructed to steal their eye. They, of course, will be desperate to get it back, and they will give him all the information he needs to find and kill Medusa. Perseus manages to steal their eye, and just as he was told, they gave him the information that he wanted in exchange for their eye. He complies by throwing the eye to the ground so that they need to search it in order to be able to obtain their eye and see. This is the most important myth regarding their existence, but it's interesting because there's different myths. One say that he actually destroyed the eye. Some say he threw it to the ground, and from what I read, in some myths they said that he actually threw it at them for them to catch it. So there's different variations and different myths, also in literature and in books, also done differently. So depends on which version you read. They're said to be the only ones that know where Medusa and the Gorgons live. Some sources state that they live beyond the sea, which is an incredibly cold and desolate area. And some, of course, said that they are beautiful, but that they became ugly and wrinkled afterwards. So different versions of what they actually look like. They're definitely immortal, and the eye that they share, I had read it was really supposed to be a crystal ball, and the tooth, in some cases, was also considered a weapon. Their hair was long and they always appeared veiled, and they represent, in some stories, the white foam of the sea waves because they are considered sea deities. They're considered harbingers of potential danger and turbulent waters. And then according to Paleolithia.com, there's a quote that says, in regarding the Graeae, beware the beauty that lies beneath the surface. They're seen as very wise yet frail and very terrifying in some cases. And it's interesting, just a note, in modern times, they come up in the Disney film Hercules and in Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. So they do come up in modern literature. Some family members of the Graeae include the dragon Ladon, which is the guardian of the Garden of Hesperids, the snake monster Echidna, Scylla, and Thiosa, mother of the Cyclops Polyphemus. They say that the 3 witches of Shakespeare's Macbeth may have actually been inspired by the gray eye.
Mm.
And that's what I have on the gray eye.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
thank you. And who'd like to share next? Let's see, who else do we have here for sharing? I think maybe it's our last one is Devana. Go ahead, and I'm going to bring the spotlight back over here and it to Devana.
Hello. So I don't really have like a presentation to share, but I did my research on the Slavic version of the fates or the triple fates, similar to the Greek Moirai and the Norse Norns. So the oh, I just lost my reference. Hang on. So these goddesses were, we think, probably inspired or derived from the Greek Moirai. They really share a lot of the specifics. They're spinner goddesses as well as the Norns, and they had the same differentiation. So one of the goddesses would spin the thread, one would wind the thread, and the other would measure and cut. So these represent birth, life, and death. They had different names for different regions. You know, of course, the Slavic regions is a very, very vast expanse of Eastern Europe all the way into Russia. So the three most common ones were the Rozhanitsy, the Sudzenitsy, and Nareknitsy. And these all had like sort of different connotations with their names. The Rozhanitsy means women giving birth or woman giving birth. So they were definitely associated with the fates of a newborn child and the associated health and well-being of the mother. The Sudzenitsy were, that means judging woman. So again, this is sort of calling in that idea of assessing the newborn soul, figuring out what their fate is meant to be, and then judging how long they were going to be allowed to live on this plane. Nareknitsy means name-giving woman, which, you know, in a related way, is another form of sort of empowering
Thank you.
empowering the newborn child and giving them sort of a defining factor for their life. Triple goddesses of fate, like many of these triple goddesses, like the Moirai and the Norns, they were very much associated with pregnancy, motherhood, marriage, and fate. And also the Carmenae, which is a set of goddesses we didn't specifically address in our presentations, I don't think, but we did look at them in one of our Via Carmen Pythia modules.
In our bibliomancy lesson.
Yes, in our bibliomancy lesson. So these spirits were believed to visit newborns and bestow gifts and determine the length of life that they would have. So while they were almost always shown as triple goddesses, sometimes these were groups of spirits and they could number all the way up to 9, and sometimes having like a queen or a goddess leading them, like Carmenta with the Carmenae or similar associations. Like the Moirai and the Norns, these goddesses were associated with spinning, as I mentioned. Sometimes they were pictured as all 3 youthful goddesses. Sometimes they were pictured as all 3 elderly goddesses. And sometimes they were pictured as youthful, middle-aged, and an elderly. And actually, while I was doing this research, we hear a lot of times about the maiden mother crone paradigm and that it is sort of a modern a modern concept, and that it wasn't as early a concept as we often hear, that it was sort of an invention by the poet Robert Graves. But there is a precedent with some of the Sudzanici and some of these Slavic goddesses being shown as a youthful one, a mother-aged one, and an elderly one. And let's see, the oldest judge, so this is the Sudzanici, the oldest judge wished for death or determined how the death would occur. The middle judge determined any physical defects or challenges that that newborn would go through while they lived their life. And the youngest of the three was the most merciful and determined how long the life would be, whether they would be married, and whether they would be happy in their lives. So I do think that there's like an interesting connection there with the maiden mother crone paradigm. With these Slavic goddesses of fate, there were a lot of folk traditions around appeasing them and potentially bringing good fortune for the newborn children. So on the third day after birth, the house would be cleaned, and a grandmother or midwife would stay up with the mother to guard her. The Sudaje or Sudaje were thought to come through the chimney. Sometimes the grandmother would hold the child over the hearth flames to strengthen it. And this is like a mirror of the portion of the Demeter story where she is out and roaming and sort of is adopted by the royal household, adopts is caring for the queen's son and holding him over the hearth flames every night to give him the power of immortality. So I just thought,
and there's an Isis myth of that as well, where Isis is trying to hold the child. And actually, what they would do in Slavic time is that you wouldn't put your child in an active oven, but that if your child was like a failure to thrive baby, you'd put them in the still warm oven after the fire had gone out, like an incubator. It was like a primordial incubator.
So interesting. So offerings of 3 sweetened cakes would be left out for the Sudarie before bed so that those spirits would sweeten the child's destiny. They might also be left wine or milk, basil, a gold coin, or jewelry for the child's future wealth. Okay, I am going to just wrap up here because I know we've got places to move on, but just a few extra little distinctions. So among the Southern Slavs, Rojanici were distinguished from Sudzanici, who were said to appear before death and during important moments in life. So not just presiding over the birth, but other points of the child's life. And then, of course, with the advent of Christianization, these goddesses became sort of incorporated into the mythology of the saints. So these Rajanici and other forms of the Slavic goddesses became the saints Paraskeva, Anastasia, and Saint Barbara in the Slavic Christianity. So that's it.
Yay! Thank you, Devana. All right, everybody. So that's just like a little sampling.
It's just like Cinderella. You didn't make that part.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like there's the
spinning.
Cinderella. That's right. Of this and that. That's so true. This is a little sampling of our work from oh, thank you. Starlet says we all did amazing. Thank you so much. This is just like a little tiny snippet of the work that we did this past year as a collegium. And this year, just spoiler alert, our theme is sacred landscapes and portal places. And so we're studying like Mount Shasta, Sedona, Shangri-La, Avalon, the Hill of Tara, the Aurora Borealis as the dwelling place of Arianrhod, and more. So this time next year, it'll be all about sacred landscapes. Mark your calendars. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break and we'll be back in 10 minutes on the hour, 3 o'clock Pacific, for Devana's presentation on Trivia, the goddess of the crossroads. Thank you.
Right.